When my daughter was around age 4, she developed this condition I call the but firsts. And it would typically show up anytime I asked her to do something that felt uncomfortable for her, like clean her room. I would say, Haley, clean your room. And she'd be like, Mom, but first I need a slice of cheese, or I need to put on my socks, or I need to comb my doll's hair. It was anything that would help her stall just a little moment longer so she didn't have to do that thing that made her feel uncomfortable. And this condition lots of times would escalate near bedtime when I would say, okay, Haley, it's time to go to bed. And she would say, oh, Mom, but first I need to clean my room. All of a sudden it was like magically important now that she cleaned her room when it wasn't earlier in the day. And, all of this stalling was just her little way of, exerting herself, her tiny little self in this big world, and avoiding those things that made her just struggle or felt a little uncomfortable. But, the thing is we never really grow out of the but firsts. They just get more sophisticated. And this was never more evident to me than when I was in corporate America. I will never forget sitting in one of those all day long strategy meetings. I'm sure you've been a part of them where it's an all hands or all team meeting. And we were sitting in this conference room and it was after lunch. And it was that time of the day where your energy starts to drain. And I remember thinking to myself, oh my goodness, like this conversation is just going around in circles and again and again. And I really needed a break. And I remember we finally got our bathroom break and I went into the bathroom and I closed the rickety steel door and I sat down and I'm like, oh, why am I so annoyed? And as I sat there and thought about it, I'm like, well, I think I'm just annoyed because we keep hearing from the same people over and over again. And when I thought about who we were hearing from, the people we were hearing from were men. And so I thought to myself, well, is there more men than women in this room today? And I did some mental math and I'm like, well, actually there's not. It's pretty evenly split. Now the leadership team was all men, but the room itself was split between about 50-50 between men and women. And I kind of got angry. I thought to myself, I'm like, why don't these women speak up? And it's almost as if I could hear those like clankety metal bathroom stall walls come into me and they were like, well, you could be the one to speak up. I'm like, oh, I can't speak up because, but first I would need to know that if I said something, people wouldn't think it was stupid. Oh, but first I should probably do a little more research on that topic. Oh, but first maybe I should work here a little bit longer, even though I'd been there for 11 years. Oh, but first, maybe I need to go back to school and get a certificate so that I'm actually certified in this and so people will take me seriously. But first. And so I wish I could tell you that I had this bathroom stall epiphany and I went back into that room and I said all the things and, everybody took my advice, but that did not happen. I went back into that room and I said absolutely nothing. But it was the first time that I had the aha moment that there was a desire to speak up, a desire to do something that if I had a little more confidence, and that I didn't do it. We didn't talk about doubt and imposter syndrome back in 2010, 2011 when that was happening. But over the course of the rest of my career, I struggled with wanting to speak up, wanting to move forward, wanting to take action, but always thinking, but first. And what I realized is those but firsts were really just what I call expensive thoughts. Thoughts that really don't produce the results that we want. And so those thoughts, they become really expensive. They cost us in our peace because we don't speak up and say the things we want to say. They cost us in our potential because we hold back. We don't apply for jobs that we're fully capable of. And ultimately, when we're holding back, that costs us in our paycheck. And it doesn't just cost us personally, it costs the organization, because imagine the untapped potential of individuals that are too nervous, too doubtful, too overwhelmed to speak up. So it's not only costly to my peace, potential, and my paycheck, but it's costly to the organization's peace, potential, and paycheck as well. So I want to dive a little deeper into doubt, imposter syndrome, a lot of the things that we're talking about today, and give you a framework so that you can leave your but first behind and those expensive thoughts and move through life a little bit more confidently. But first, I have a question for you. And I want you to write this in your notebook. There's a little spot for you. I want you to take a moment and think, what would I do if I had a little more confidence?